Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
The Sun Devils are back from the bye week. Joe's back from the bye week. And man, there's a war a brewing in Salt Lake City tonight.
Yes, there is. ASU got a much needed little break from the action. And I did, normal jobs come into place sometimes and you got to do that, But hey, I'm back here ready to roll. And you certainly hope that ASU is ready to roll because it's been talked about a lot. This month of November coming up, this 4-game stretch coming up is a doozy for Arizona State. And I'm sure is going to really determine a lot as far as what the Devils will or won't do throughout this 2025 season. And that gets started this Saturday at a venue, a location, and a team that has not been kind or generous to ASU in the last decade or so, that being the Utah Utes and Rice-Eccles Stadium there in Salt Lake City. So it's a big-time clash, big-time meeting with a lot of storylines between these two teams that some may consider rivals.
Yeah, it's like some ASU fans might be pining for the days of like the early, when they first joined the Pac-12, the John Hayes quarterback days where ASU would just continue to just run over them as kind of like an automatic win on the schedule. But those days are so long gone.
I think there was like a time, within those first couple years that we're like, is Utah not ready for the Pac-12? Yeah. Like, did they make the leap at a time that isn't the right decision? And then, yeah, they certainly turned that around. The last few years, as we'll break down, of course, have been a little bit of a slide backward for the Utes compared to their normal standard. But this season so far has been very good to date. And again, there's going to be a lot proven for both these teams that will take the field on Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to preview the action with Utah insider Patrick Kinahan, a couple of key Sun Devil players. We'll also end the show talking a little bit of Sun Devil hockey. That season just got underway. Tom Hardon's going to be coming on and give his expertise into this year's program for Greg Powers. Son of a little bit of a rough start, but overall it's going to be a pretty talented bunch. Should be another fun year on the ice for the Sun Devils. But let's start off with some news items, Joe. Now, this is kind of interesting. Everybody always likes to, put some varied degrees of stock into the polls, depending on whether they feel their team is represented adequately. But I think the voters and the AP at least got it right. ASU is up 4 spots coming off the off the bye to number 21 in the country. And I've made no secret that for me, the AP is the poll of record before the CFP rankings. Interesting. ASU is 23rd in the coaches poll, 1 spot, Joe, behind somehow still ranked Penn State.
Yeah, there are some interesting rankings going on. I know, Notre Dame has a couple losses and they're, ranked at a decent spot, but those things even out, as you go through. We're kind of like this is like where the ranking is, I think, should start. Exactly. The preseason ones really didn't amount to too terribly much. Wasn't Texas the number 1 team in the country in the preseason?
Yeah, preseason 1 and 2 are currently unranked in the AP.
Yeah, there you go. So that's 5. Tough thing. Like kind of like Texas A&M in baseball, number 1 team didn't even make the postseason, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, early season polls are very defeated. I was going to, a lot of things are undefeated. Early season polls are defeated. But yep, for ASU to be where they are, that's a good spot. And obviously, again, a lot's going to be proven over these next few weeks, and we're going to get a real good understanding of what this team's about. But good for ASU to be in the polls. Again, 1 week from now, it could mean absolutely nothing, or they could be well into the teens. We will see it unfold.
All right, so some quick injury news after Monday's press conference. Kenny Dillingham made kind of a mixed bag. On the good side, Jalen Moss, the slot receiver, he's back after missing basically all the action since his debut in week 1. On the flip side, Xavier Alford still going to be missing from the Sun Devil backline, and defensive tackle Zach Swanson also is likely out for the Utah game.
Yeah, ASU's still really trying to find an established second wide receiver. Kind of thought it would be Derek Eusebio after the performance he had against Baylor, and he did contribute against TCU. They did sprinkle the ball a little bit, so you got guys involved, just not necessarily anybody that seemed to be a very high degree. Moss is the one that has the best resume among the candidates, just hasn't been able to get off the ground quite yet. But what he did at Fresno State was impressive. So we'll see if that adds a wrinkle to this Sun Devil offense. But yeah, Xavier Alford being out, I mean, that is like the name every time the injuries are updated and the press conference come out, it's like hoping that he's back in action, but just not yet meant to be. It'll be a huge boost when he is ready to return. He's just someone that, it's hard to replace. He's one of the absolute best defensive backs in the conference and one of the better ones in college football.
All right, so one last news item to pass along, and the much-anticipated game on October 18th in Tempe when likely a top 10 team in Texas Tech comes to town. That one's going to get a lot of eyeballs because it's kicking off 1 p.m. Arizona time, national television audience on Fox.
There you go. That's going to be a big time showdown. Now, obviously, you can't look past this weekend's opponent by any stretch. I know that our brother Jordan Simone is petitioning for game day to come. We'll see if there are any sort of big productions on campus for what happens there. But again, what happens this weekend, I think, is really going to determine a lot of that. But that's going to be, not technically prime time, but prime time in the sense of, man, we're, getting into that nice Arizona weather, a day game in that circumstance. I love that sort of thing to see that set up. So that very well should be a huge clash, no matter what happens this weekend, but especially if ASU's able to get a victory. Now, then, if it bugged you for ASU to be on the sidelines during the bye week, and if it bugs you to have some critters in your house, or even the thought, if that makes your skin crawl, well, what you got to do is you got to get connected with Nice Pest Company. Of course, a business owned and operated not just by ASU alumni, but by some die-hard Sun Devil fanatics. Nice Pest Company serves residences and businesses all over the valley. Check this out. Like we've told you every single time, you can get your first service for just $42. And best of all, 100% of those proceeds will be donated by Nice Pest Company to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. You got to support those who support the things that you love. Give your business to fellow Sun Devils with an incredible business reputation and who, just like you, want to do their part to help Sun Devil athletics to thrive. Nice Pest Company has sent well over 100,000 bugs to their final resting place. They've got more than 200 5-star Google reviews. So what that tells you is that you can rest easy knowing that you and your family and your home are in great shape and they're protected. So whether you've got scorpions, bed bugs, creepy crawlers, critters, insects, centipedes, millipedes, whatever it is that you've got, or if you just want to make sure that you do not get an unwanted house guest of that nature, of course, you got to hit up Nice Pest Company. Let them do the dirty work so that you can have the peace of mind that you deserve. It is always a nice day to support the Sun Devils, and with Nice Pest Company, it's always a nice day to be bug-free. Check them out online at nicepest.com for a free quote, and be sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Nice Pest Company.
So you can see you guys had the benefit of a bye week. How do you feel the team utilized this time off?
I think we utilized it good. We were just focusing on ourselves and just trying to get better at the little things. Wasn't really focused on Utah or the bye week, just a little bit, but we was really just focused on ourselves, trying to get better.
When you kind of look back at a review of these first 5 games, say from the running back position, how do you feel that the group performed?
I feel like the group performed real good, real well. I feel like the line doing good, helping us get hit our holes, and yeah.
So obviously you are headed into the bye week, atop the Big 12 leaders in rushing. Now, what does that? Does that feel like extra validation of knowing that you're doing a good job and kind of being the best in the conference?
Yeah, I feel good. Best in the nation. But it feels good though. See that I'm up there. Just keep working. I take it week by week.
Yeah, obviously you put in a lot of work, and Kenny's really talked about all the work that you put into. Obviously, I have the support of the teammates as well. What is it like, just knowing seeing that kind of that production as a result of all that hard work that you put in the off season, coming back from the injury?
I feel good. I feel good coming to light, just knowing that that all the hard work is paying off, and just got to keep it going every week. So, but it feels real good to be back and rolling.
What were some of your favorite moments of this first 5 games and the success that you've been having?
Favorite moment, I'd say TCU, because we came back from 17-0.
What is it?
I feel like that was one of the best moments.
Yeah, what is it about this team that has that resiliency, that ability to overcome that adversity? Even though you guys might dig yourselves a hole, you always seem to find a way to get back into it.
Because we know who we are. We know we're a good team, and leads don't get us down. So we know we could be a good team. So when we down, we just work harder and just go.
Obviously, you don't want to do that on a week-in-week-out basis. So what are some of the keys that you guys have kind of worked on to not fall in those big holes and to put together a full 60 minutes?
Just start fast. That's the main emphasis of this week, was just to start fast. Daly wanted us to start practice faster. Just feel like we did that on offense. I feel like we did that, and yeah, just start fast. Really, that's it.
Cool. going into a really hostile environment in Rice-Eccles Stadium, one of the most the hardest places to play in the conference. So how are you guys preparing to for that atmosphere, the noise, and obviously maybe some stormy weather as well?
Just like wetting the ball, catching wet balls, and ball security with wet balls, and going in the bubble with loud noise. Just trying to prepare for that.
How does it going up against you?
So I heard you're quite the TikTok star. What's your favorite dance to do on TikTok?
Right now?
Ooh. Okay, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And last one for you. So obviously you guys are going up against one of the best defenses in the conference, Utah. Pretty formidable defensive line. What are some of the things that jump out to you guys about what they like to do on defense, and what are going to be some of the keys on Saturday?
They like to play man and blitz a lot, so that's what they like to do. So it's going to be a fun game.
So coming off the bye, how valuable was that time to kind of heal up a little bit, to get some rest, and kind of take stock of the first 5 games?
Nah, it was definitely key. I feel like catch bodies, a little halfway, messed up some. So yeah, I definitely think it was key. And just self-scouting while being able to come back, see what we done did up to this point, and just come back and this weekend, last weekend, honestly, just work on everything we feel like we need to work on, get better at different techniques and stuff like that. So it definitely was key. It was very useful, and I really feel like we took advantage of it.
As a part of that self-scouting, what were some of the things, the big takeaways and things that you realized did well over those first 5 games, and maybe some things to work on?
I can't even focus. Well, some stuff we worked on, man, just like I said, just the simple stuff like tackling, a lot of just typical simple defense stuff, like just different techniques, honestly, and just kind of ultimately it was a good time showing for the young guys to come out there and show what they can do as well. But older guys, just come out there, work on whatever you feel like you needed to work on. We just, Coach Dillon was telling us, find one thing to work on every single day. You know what I'm saying? So whether that, everybody had different stuff. But I think it was definitely key. It was useful. It was key. And I feel like everybody took advantage of it by week.
Now the guy who was just tripping at you a little bit, and Raleek, obviously, one of the key guys on this team. What has it been like just seeing his success, on the opposite side of the ball?
I'm very proud of Raleek. Like I know what Leek been through. Like I know it's been some years, so he really again got loose on the field. And Leek one of them guys. Like I played Leek at Mater Dei, like in Duncanville. I seen the young Leek, and then to see it now, it's crazy. Like I'm real proud of Leek. I seen what he put in this summer. I seen what he did for this. I seen him change up here, a lot of his habits and stuff like that. And that's why he doing what he doing out there. And I'm proud. I love to see him every time he take off.
What was it like just seeing one of the young guys in your room, Martell, kind of call game?
Tell you, we had already knew he was going. It was coming. We felt it. We already felt it. We felt it coming. He had one earlier that he dropped, and Coach came. He told me, he said, "You're gonna get the next one." And sure enough, he was in that window all night. So I seen it coming, and when it happened, I was just proud of Telly. Telly one of them guys. He come out here, he come to work. He look into those around him, and he very good at adapting. He pick it up fast, and that's why y'all see what y'all seeing. Telly one of them ones.
Last year, one of the key ingredients was your guys' ability to overcome adversity, the resiliency. No matter what happened in the game, you guys were always going to find a way to get back into it. Seems like the last couple of weeks is the same script is coming up. Where do you attribute that? That innate ability to always be in a game?
I think that's just a testament to the people we got on our team and our coaches, but really just the kids on our team. We got an experienced team, but we do know we know we're experienced. But I really feel like it's no flinch. I really feel like we got a lot of guys you can't shake. We got a lot of guys that stay here, they stay level-headed. So it's when we did get down, we didn't see no commotion or nothing on the sidelines, nobody arguing back and forth. We don't have that type of team. I feel like we got a lot of guys that's gonna waymakers, make something happen. And ultimately that's what we did. We tightened up, came out there, played harder, and we got the win, the result that we wanted. But I think it's just a testament to the guys I play with. We got a lot of hungry cats, and I feel like it shows on Saturdays at times.
Of course, you're going up to face a pretty good Utah team so far, and a very mobile quarterback. What kind of challenges does an offense with a guy that mobile present?
Definitely. When we got playing against a running quarterback, and with the defense we run, the +1 run game, it's definitely their with him being able to run. Like he knows. I feel like he makes his best plays scrambling, so we got to keep contained on him, and ultimately get around him and be physical. And, get a couple of hits on him, and I think we'll have. It's going to be definitely a fun game for sure. It's going to be fun.
Now we are accelerating out of this bye week back into action. Things are getting back into the fast lane for Sun Devil football. And if you're jonesing for a new vehicle, like you're jonesing for the Devils to get back on the field, your only call needs to be to Jones Auto Group. Jones has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state. And it is a fact, Jones Auto Group was the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes. And it's your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. In addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations that can potentially save you some big-time money. Basically, to put that into plain English, they're located in an area of the state that has a lower tax rate than Maricopa County. So if you purchase from them, you can potentially save some money on the taxes that you'd spend. And when you're buying a vehicle, that can really add up. To me, that's about as good as it gets. You get to work with a fellow Sun Devil who will treat you like family, potentially hook you up with some savings there. So here's what you got to do. Like I always tell you, contact Parker Jones, not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation Sun Devil, just like you, just like everybody watching and listening, a diehard Sun Devil fan. Take down his cell phone number. That's right. He doesn't want you to send him a fax or an email or hit him up at the office. He wants a personal connection. Hit him up on his cell phone, 602-881-8998. Again, that's 602-881-8998. Browse their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970. Now, before we go behind enemy lines to learn about the Utah Utes, we have to welcome back good friend of ours, highly accomplished radio voice in the state of Utah, but of course, most importantly, an ASU alum, an Arizona guy, radio host for 97.5, 1280 The Zone and the Zone Sports Network in Utah. Coming back once again, our good friend Patrick Kinahan. Patrick, welcome back.
Good to be here. How you guys doing?
There you go. That's how we like to get things started. So you know what? That's a very, very suitable intro for our talk here today because, before we jump into things about ASU and the Utes for this game and this season so far, when we all caught up last year, that was before ASU really got hot and went on its run to the Big 12 championship. So let's start off from your position. What was last year like to be able to see ASU get its first conference championship in nearly 30 years and march its way to the college football playoff?
Yeah, it was beyond the realm of believability. I mean, the word unbelievable gets thrown around in sports so often, right? We always hear it. This thing's unbelievable. That thing's unbelievable. Well, this one was the true definition of unbelievable because when you look at where they were and when they came up to Rice Eccles the year before in Kenny Dillingham's first year, it was 55-3. The only thing that I remember from that night that was good is one of my favorite bands is a country band called Old Dominion, and they were playing at the Delta Center that night, and the game started at the day, so I was able to go to the concert and not have to miss it. That was the only thing that was good that particular day. I mean, the Sun Devils didn't belong on the field. I was texting with some Utah coaches. I've been up here a long time, and so I know these guys very well, and they told me that they had genuine pity for the Sun Devils. They felt so bad for them because they were so far and so badly outmanned, right? So with that in mind, I mean, they were starting a tight end and a running back at quarterback, right? They weren't even starting quarterbacks at quarterback. And you would think that, all right, the next step last season, if they could find a way to get to 6 wins, well, my gosh, they blew that away. I mean, that was like I used as a longtime Sun Devil follower. You're always hoping, get to 6 wins before you get to November, and maybe you got something. So it was stunning. It was something that was beyond comprehension that they did what they were able to do.
Now, last season for the Utes, not quite as good as ASU, to say the least. I believe the first losing record in over a decade there. Painful end to an otherwise memorable career for Cam Rising at Utah was what we saw last season. I know they hit the portal hard over the offseason, but what were some of the other things that stood out to you the most as far as what Utah did this offseason to correct things?
Yeah, obviously they went with a new offensive coordinator. Andy Ludwig resigned during the season. They had another fill-in guy who's now, I believe, the head coach back at UMass, and they needed somebody to come in to give them a spark. And it's amazing. They get Jason Beck, who was a BYU guy, junior college transfer out of Ventura County over there in LA, comes up, backs up John Beck, who was the quarterback for the time at BYU. John, of course, went to Mountain View over there in Mesa. And so people may remember that name. Same school as Todd Heap, same school as Max Hall. And Jason didn't play that much because John ends up being an NFL quarterback. And now he's over there in Southern California working out quarterbacks with, I think, Taylor Kelly, too. That QB something 3, they call it. I don't know the exact title. But anyway, Jason Beck then gets his start. He goes into coaching. Ron McBride, former, he's still a legend. He's 85 years old there. They just put his name in the Ring of Honor last year, or last month, I should say, at Rice-Eccles Stadium where the Utes play. Gets Jason into coaching. He gets hooked up with Bronco Mendenhall, goes to New Mexico last year, recruits. They had already had a kid named, what's the kid, the quarterback? I can't think of his name here for Utah. I'm having a Devontae. Dampier. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking of another kid. Dampier, right? Devin Dampier, who's a Phoenix kid. And I heard that Kenny Dillingham said he should have recruited him much earlier. And it's amazing, those two guys. And really, Dampier just changed the outlook, brought hope to Utah's program. We all saw what he did for New Mexico, lower level, obviously, in the Mountain West, but he was electric with rushing over for 1,000 yards, passing over for 2,000. And they felt like if they could just get a quarterback, they had everything else in place to be competitive. They got the quarterback. Obviously, they're doing well. They got beat up by Texas Tech, but they have a lot of anticipation for getting back on the winning track Saturday night.
All right, so let's look at the 2025 season so far for the Utes. 4 wins have come against teams that so far have looked like they're maybe not the cream of the crop. And then you mentioned the game against Texas Tech, competitive into the fourth quarter before Tech ultimately pulls away in a 24-point win. What do you think of this season so far has taught us about this year's Utes?
Yeah, they haven't played anybody. I guess their biggest win now was UCLA, which obviously beat Penn State. I was at that game, covering the game in the Rose Bowl, and they totally outclassed the Bruins. And Devin Dampier looked great, did what he was supposed to do. If you can find a way to bottle him up, you've got a chance. Texas Tech did that. Kyle Whittingham's talking about that Texas Tech has assembled a great team. I think that's code for saying has purchased a great team, right? And they look like they might be the class. We'll see. I know they're in Tempe here in a couple of weeks, the earlier in the day, and then at night at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock your time, that BYU and Utah play. And so they haven't beaten anybody who's any good. No fault of their own. They can't expect UCLA to stink when they schedule them. They did in the first game, and maybe they're better now. We'll see what happens with the Bruins. And then they beat Wyoming. They only scored 3 points in the first half up in Laramie. A lot of self-inflicted wounds. They poured it on in the second half. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, they went back to West Virginia. And the best part of West Virginia, as you know, is watching Rich Rod's head explode on the sidelines, because that's always fun to watch him. We remember him down at the U of A when it looked like he was just going to have a conniption and when things didn't go right. So they haven't beaten anybody, but they feel like to a degree they gotten their mojo back. The great thing about this conference, guys, I'm sad that the Pac-12 went away, as probably you are, because growing up in Phoenix, it was all about the Pac-10. I was there for the only Rose Bowl that they won. I was in the stands at that point. I had just moved over to LA as a sports writer. I was working for the Mesa Tribune, got a job over in LA, and at my first year, they win the conference, and that was really cool. But the Big 12, that's where we're at. It's such a competitive conference, man. I love this conference because you don't know what's going to happen from game to game. There's so many good teams, and maybe Texas Tech has pulled away a little bit. We'll see what happens. So as far as this goes here, everybody is going to have a tough stretch coming up. Utah's going to have a tough stretch. BYU, who we also cover here, is going to have a tough stretch. They're in Tucson on Saturday to play the Wildcats, and then they really get to the meat of the schedule. Same thing with the Devils, right? They've got many opportunities to prove themselves, and right now there's a lot of mystery as far as what Utah is. How good are they? This game is the first real test that will be followed by several tests.
All right, so let's talk about Devin Dampier, a guy you mentioned already, is just coming in and kind of electrified that Ute offense. What skills does he bring to that field that really have helped change the character of this Ute offense?
One of the things that I think he's brought that I've been able to discover, I saw him play on television last year, 5 games. We also, in my job, I have to pay attention to Utah State up in Logan to the north there. They're in the Mountain West. New Mexico, where Dampier was in the Mountain West. They came and played Utah State. So I watched him play. His first game, I think, last year was against U of A, and he lit it up again against those guys in Tucson. New Mexico had no defense. They couldn't stop anybody, so they ended up losing that game. But the thing that I have learned being around him now, starting back in the spring with spring ball, and then basically we're into our 3rd month of being around these guys because you got to account for August when they're practicing and they had media availability, and then of course September. Now we're in October. This kid has got great leadership skills. His personality is really sparkling. He looks you in the eye. He addresses you and gives you complete answers. And I was told, I know the coaches, as I said, I know them very well. A lot of them have been here during my time. Kyle Whittingham and myself were about the same age. We're golfing buddies. We've actually golfed in Arizona together, down at Ocotillo, which I think is down there in Chandler, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, he tells me, hey, this kid is an unquestioned leader. So I get that information before I even meet and have an opportunity to talk to Dampier. But then after you talk to him, you can see that. And the kids really believe in this kid. And he's kept an upbeat mentality, even in the loss. And he hasn't ducked any media obligations, win or lose. And they've only lost 1 game, but he was right there, willing to talk, not copying an attitude, and keeping it positive, which I think that you need. Certainly, it was only 1 loss. It was a disappointing loss, but as you guys said, it was 13-10 with 10 minutes to go in the game. And Texas Tech scored a couple late touchdowns. I think Utah's defense wore out. And so his leadership skills was I don't want to say it's a surprise, but it's something that I wasn't necessarily aware of. And he's got it. And then his skill set. He's very athletic. He's not a drop back passer. If you can get them in a specific passing situations, you got a chance. Your chances increase. And you also have to bottle him up because at any point he can take off for a 30, 40-yard run and be electric, particularly at home, and that's going to energize the crowd. So I think his overall athletic ability combined with his leadership makes him who he is.
Now, during his time at New Mexico, the main knock against Dampier was that he tended to turn the ball over a little bit, and that reared its head in that loss to Texas Tech. So what does he have to do to avoid that? And I guess if you're ASU, what do you have to do to try to amplify that?
I think you got to make sure that you do not let him get loose, particularly early, to get his confidence, and then everybody's on the team confidence, because this team here, this group of guys are kind of a little shell-shocked. Last year, Rising goes down. He tried to make a go of it in the BYU game, or the ASU game, and it didn't work, right? And they didn't have anybody behind him. They still don't really have anybody behind Dampier. They got Wilson, who hasn't played at all. They got a freshman out of California named Bird Flicklin, who they've put in garbage time. But that you can't really count on those guys to do anything. So they've got to make sure they bottle him up. Don't let him get out of the pocket. Don't let him scramble, and make sure that you put them in passing situations. Because if you can put them in 3rd and long, or even behind the chains, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, then that's ASU's best chance, because that's what Texas Tech did. I don't think if Devin Dampier specifically has to stand in the pocket and try to beat you through the air, I don't think that's going to happen.
So as far as the New Mexico to Utah connection, it's Dampier, it's Beck, but it's not just them. Naquan Rogers leads the team in rushing touchdowns. Ryan Davis, the team's leading receiver so far this season. All of them came from New Mexico. So how important has this UNM to Utah connection been to this start for Utah?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, when those kids started to come over, and basically Jason Beck, he tells the story that before he took the job, he was asking for specifically Dampier, what job do you want me to take where I can recruit you to Utah, right? And obviously he knows there's a position open. And people say, well, wait a second here. This is New Mexico. And I would shoot right back. I know New Mexico is a lower level Big 12 versus Mountain West, but there was a Big Sky guy who had a fair amount of success in Tempe, and he's with the Giants right now. And I often say there may be players who play at a lower level for whatever reason, but that does not mean they're a lower level player. They just everybody's got their own different stories, right? And obviously I was talking about Scattaboo, and he'd only had the one scholarship offer to Sacramento State, and then he comes to ASU, and then I would imagine that he'll get his name in the Ring of Honor or whatever they do. It's not called Sun Devil Stadium anymore. I don't know what it's called. I know it's named after a credit union or something like that, right?
Mountain America. I think they got a presence in Utah, right?
Yeah, there you go. For me, it's I still call where the Giants play Candlestick, so I'm
still call it Bank One Ballpark out here. So I get you, man.
Yeah, so they got those names. Thank goodness for Dodger Stadium. But with that in mind, yeah, these kids have been the receiver there. Obviously, that you just mentioned him, right? He stood out. The running back has been interesting because they got Wayshawn Parker out of Washington State. Washington State got raided. Feels so bad for Oregon State and Washington State because they were undercut when everybody left, and they're left holding the bag. And in this era of kids being able to be immediately eligible, most of their players take off. The offense coordinator gets a job at Oklahoma. Mateer goes with him. Atawaya was the running backs coach, kid who played at BYU at Washington State. He gets the job as the running backs coach at Utah, and Wayshawn Parker went with him. Wayshawn Parker said he was talking about rushing for 1,500 to 2,000 yards this year because he was in a passing offense last year as a freshman in Pullman, and he ran for 700 yards. I bought it. I thought Utah always has an 1,000-yard rusher. It's like what Aguano has done as the running backs coach. I assume he did that over at Chandler High School too. That they had great running backs, right? Even when the Devils weren't very good, they still had Rashad White and Benjamin and Herm Edwards managed to put guys who can run the ball out on the field. It's what they do, and we're already seeing Brown here leading the Big 12 in rushing. I assume he's going to get 1,000 yards. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt. But Parker hasn't really taken the position like they thought. Just today, Kyle Whittingham was talking about we need to get somebody who is our RB1, as they always call it, right? Because that's who Utah has been for many years, going back to Ron McBride. Ron McBride was an old offensive line coach under Dick Tomey at the U of A, right? He was the same way that Kyle is in terms of blocking, tackling, and running the ball. And Utah, even last year, Mekhi Bernard, they stunk last year. He still ran for over 1,000 yards, and he was a little dude. So Parker really hasn't done what they thought they were going to do, what they thought they had in him, and that's given this New Mexico kid, as you say, an opportunity. So they're a little unsettled there, and it'll be interesting to see, can they get settled, because that's the staple of Utah's program is running the ball and obviously playing great defense.
Fits perfectly into the next question. Yeah, because that staple has been so long an identity of the Utes is to run the damn ball. And they have three guys so far now with including Dampier, over 250 yards on this season. What should the ASU defense, which has pretty formidable run defense in their own right, what should the Sun Devils expect to see from this Utah ground game?
Yeah, Jason Beck has come in here, and we've been down this road before, because that's the one knock on Kyle Whittingham is he's run through a bunch of offensive coordinators, right? And he's fired a few. Other guys have left. The idea being he's a defensive guy, and he could be difficult to try to run an offense under. I've gotten to know several of the former offensive coordinators, and everyone except Norm Chow. And Norm Chow was of the status. He coached with Kyle's father who was a big time defensive guy down at BYU, and when Kyle was a linebacker there. So Norm, and he told me, he said, "Yeah, I know he's tough to coach with, but he never gave me any problems. But I've also heard the other guys say the whole idea of Utah's offense is to protect the defense, which limits them and what they can do. Kyle just cannot stand turnovers. He'd rather give up parts of his salary than have turnovers. He just is so against it. So it's the same philosophy of we want to run the ball. We want to impose our will. Kyle's a tough guy. He and he's legitimate tough guy, except uh, I let him know that he can't beat me on the golf course, and that's something that I've taken great pride in. He took up golf a lot earlier. I learned golf when I was 13 years old over there at Bel Air Country Club at about 51st and Bell Avenue, because that's I lived on that side. So I've been golfing since I was a kid. He picked it up later, and it's hard, but the staple of Utah program is to still run the ball, and they've got Spencer Fano is an offensive lineman who's projected to go very, very high, possibly top 10. He's only a junior. We're assuming he's going to come out. And then they got another kid, Lomu, who's from the Phoenix area. He's expected to be a high pick, maybe not first round, maybe that second day. Who knows? Maybe he could sneak in at the end of the first round. And Kyle's talked about this offensive line being the best that he's had at Utah. But then after the Texas Tech game, he said, never in a million years that I think we would be dominated at the line of scrimmage, which is what Texas Tech did. If the Sun Devils can recreate anything to the degree that Texas Tech did, then they've got a halfway decent chance as long as they don't turn the ball over.
Now, looking at the Utes passing game, it's kind of interesting that collectively although the passing targets are averaging under 10 yards per catch. So is that kind of indicative of a passing game that's really built heavily on the quick and short game?
Yeah, they really struggle to get the ball downfield through the air. Anything beyond 20, 25. You could see, sitting up in the press box, you're high up and you can see the defensive alignment, which is why they have coaches up there as opposed to watching it on television. And you could see that the safeties for Texas Tech were moving up to the line of scrimmage to the point, try to throw it over our heads. They completed a couple of long passes. One led to their only touchdown. They had another one called back because the offensive lineman, there was miscommunication. They audibled. He thought it was an RPO. He gets it downfield. He's like 5 yards, 6 yards downfield, and they get flags, so the play doesn't count. But other than that, they're probably not going to beat you over the top, which I think it plays into ASU's hands a little bit. I know they've had some injuries. I know Alford's been out, and Montana Warren, I think, was out, and I think he's back now. And they've got some other guys who've been able to get in there and play fairly well enough to where, man, they shut down TCU pretty good after the slow start, and the same thing with Baylor. The Sun Devils, obviously, they've got to find a way to score once they get not inside the red zone, but once they get inside the 1 yard line, maybe you could score a touchdown or two instead of having to go for field goals or even the touchdown that got them ahead, that was fourth down before they found Tyson open there. So just keep them under control, and I think they'll have a good chance. Now, my guess is Utah is really going to try to open it up a little bit more, use some different type of things, the quick hitters. That's going to be their strength. It's not going to be deep balls. They don't have anything close to a Jordan Tyson, obviously, the statistics that you just showed. And they had a tight end that was emerging. He got hurt. And they've been using the tight ends here. Also, Dalton Kincaid was a first-round draft choice who's starring for the Buffalo Bills now. Their tight ends in the last few years have been really, really good. They're not quite there yet, but they've still got a couple guys. A kid named Bentley is a kid to watch out for because, and then Andrews is another kid, but they were moving him around, putting him in the backfield, kind of like they used to do with Brant Keithy a few years back. If you remember him, he actually got hurt against the Sun Devils down in Tempe a couple years ago when I think Iguano was the interim coach and never was able to be the same. And so they've got tight ends that they like to move around, but they've never really had a big time receiver that can go down. Even a couple of guys who've made the NFL, Devon Vele was on the team a couple years back, and then he gets the 7th round with the Broncos last year, and then they traded him to the Saints. I mean, you would have never known by looking at his statistics. Remember Steve Smith, the great running receiver in the NFL, shorter guy? He was here back when McBride was the coach. He had no stats whatsoever. This program doesn't utilize receivers down the field in the manner that so many teams do. It's just not. It wasn't McBride's way, and it really isn't Whittingham's way.
So moving over to the defense, seems like just about every year Utah always gets to the quarterback, and they've got a good one this year. John Henry Daly kind of coming out of nowhere, and he's among the very top, not just of the Big 12, but of the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. What's enabled him to have such a great start to the year?
Yeah, and an interesting guy. He came over from BYU, right? So he's a trader, and he came up the road here, BYU from Salt Lake's about 40 miles or so. And, we knew him at BYU a little bit, but he's really broken out, which is so classic for Utah. It seems like every year they have somebody who really stands out, and he's there for a couple years, and then he goes on to the NFL, and then they bring in somebody else or multiple guys. And it's amazing year after year. I don't know how they do it. They end up with so much depth. And plus, it seems like guys are like, wait, he's still in the program? He still hasn't used up eligibility? And I know we had the COVID thing, so
When you're
off.
talking about Brant Keithy, I was going to say that guy was around for a while for sure.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Brant Keithy.
Cam Rising is pretty much Rising is the poster boy for, extra eligibility. Yeah.
Yeah. And those guys are getting the last couple of years are getting money. And so why wouldn't you stay, right? And Daly, they call it Sack Lake City, right? It's a playoff Salt Lake City, obviously. It's something that caught on several years back, and he's just the latest. Yeah, and there you go, man. They always seem to have somebody or multiple guys finding their ways to get to the quarterback. That's what this program is built on, and I don't think this year is any different.
All right, so obviously Utah, one of the staples alongside running the ball on offense is having a really tough, good defense. And so obviously it's going to be a formidable challenge for ASU's offense. What kind of game planning, putting you in the shoes of Marcus Arroyo, what kind of game plan should the Sun Devil offense utilize to try to have some success against this tough Utah defense on the road?
Yeah, that's interesting. Arroyo was the toast of the town here until they got in the Mississippi State game and they couldn't score the touchdown and they had to go for the field goals. If they scored the touchdown, maybe that goes into overtime. And we've seen their struggles. It's been weird. People around here, they say, they miss Scattaboo. And I say, yeah, they miss Scattaboo, but maybe in two situations. One, short yardage, and also I think the guy was the heart and soul of the team, right? And people rallied around him. He had a way. My wife came with me. She's a Phoenix native, and she came with me last year to the BYU game. Well, we've obviously got friends and family since that is our hometown. We live in Utah now, but we're both consider our home to be Phoenix, right? So she goes with some friends that invite her to the game, and they are sitting in the ASU section. And right in front of her is Scattaboo's parents, right? And she's taking pictures of them. It's funny. The dad looks like the son, obviously, right down to the tattoos and all. And you just felt like in that section, everybody was so energized on anything Cam Scattaboo did. So I think they might even miss him more. His on-field production obviously was awesome, but just the intensity that he brought. And I'm waiting for somebody to do that. And I don't know if Levitt is that kind of guy, right? And maybe it's Jordan Tyson, but it's hard when you're not touching the ball that many times. So continue. I know there was thought of, and Kenny Dillingham talking about, I want to spread the ball around more. Well, not if number 0 can continue to do what he does, right? So if he's open, get him the ball. Even if he's not open, he finds ways to make the catch, right? So continue to look for him. And Utah they're gearing up to make sure they find a way to contain Levitt. I've been underwhelmed with Levitt as a quarterback throwing the ball this year, but his running ability is still something that is awesome because it seems when he runs, just about every time it's on a third down and it's a big run to get him a first down. So they got to keep that going. And our guy, when they get, I was joking with people around here. I was saying the Sun Devils should just stop at the 21 and then they don't have to worry about red zone failure, right? Because that's when it starts. Get the field goal kicker back on track. I know he missed a couple of field goals 2 weeks ago. They had a bye. Utah had a bye last week too, for that matter. And he was going to make that chippy to win the game. You know, there was no doubt about that. But find a way to continue to not have these 3 and outs, man. To figure out creatively how to move the ball because you're going to have to do that. I don't know if you can just line up and run the ball series after series on Utah. It's never been that way. Very rarely do they allow a 100-yard rusher. So Arroyo, now's the time, right? There's no need to hold back because you need this game big time because you got Texas Tech the following week. And I think Texas Tech might be the class of the league. And so you can't afford to lose 2 games in a row. All of a sudden, the little sparkle that you've gotten past the Mississippi State loss because of these 2 conference wins, one of which was huge. Both of them were huge, but winning on the road here. And what you don't want is to undercut that by losing 2 games in a row. And I have to assume if you're going to lose to Utah, you're probably going to lose to Texas Tech. I don't know that, but I think it's important for them to be creative because that's what you need to do to move the ball consistently against Utah because they just don't allow teams to run on them to the level that the Sun Devils, I'm sure, would like to do.
All right, so obviously guys like Devin Dampier and Lander Barton, these names that have been around and established themselves in the college football landscape for a while. But who's maybe one guy on each side of the ball, a little bit under the radar, you think might be a kind of an X factor in determining Saturday's outcome?
You know, you mentioned Lander Barton, right? And his older brothers played at football for Utah. One, Cody Barton, is still in the NFL. Jackson Barton, big offensive lineman. He was with the Cardinals practice squad. Their sister, because there's 4 of them, their sister was a big-time All-American volleyball player. And the dad played football and baseball at Utah. And the mom played basketball and volleyball at Utah. So that Barton name is legendary. And my wife is she just retired as a teacher. She taught Lander Barton in the 6th grade, and she taught PE. She's a jock. Every time they had a new unit, she'd always have Lander go ahead and demonstrate what she was doing because what she wanted to kids to learn because he was so coordinated. He's going to make his mark as a linebacker, but they've been putting him at tight end. And now I told you about the injury that they had. So watch for him maybe to be more incorporated. And also, this isn't necessarily a name under the radar, but it's a name that Sun Devil fans need to be aware of. The kid's name is Smith Snowden. His dad's Will played at BYU. He chooses to come to Utah. He's a 2-way player, right? And he is electric. He's a defensive back, probably where he's going to play in the NFL, but they've been moving him around in the offensive set, putting him at running back, putting him in the slot, putting him wide out, figuring out reverses. And number 2, I think his number is. And so watch out for him because he's very electric. Then they got a kid named Jackson Benny who kind of came out of nowhere, a local kid. He too is playing both ways. Now that's sort of an indictment on the guys that they have on the offensive side because the long running joke, but it's truth as some jokes are, is that if you're a really good offensive player for Utah, man, you're just going to excel on defense when you get to Utah because Kyle moves a lot of guys from offense to defense. There's been so many guys who played offense, recruited offensively coming out of high school, and then he moves them to defense. And then they go on to stellar long NFL careers, not just a blip, not a cup of coffee, as they say. I'm talking 10 years. That's what he does. This Jackson Benny and Smith Snowden, they're able to play both ways and along with Leonard Barton. And I'm hearing that they might use those guys more because, let's like you said with Arroyo, there's no need to hold back now. Same thing with Utah. You already got one loss. You can argue that Utah, if they lose this game, they got no chance to finish first or second because at that point they'd have 2 losses and they would not have the tiebreaker against Tech or ASU. So they would technically probably need ASU to lose 3 conference games, which they would then have to go 3-3 the rest of the way. That's not going to happen. Maybe they stumble along the way, but everybody knows at the Friday after Thanksgiving, they're going to beat the crap out of the U of A, right? So that's not going to, worse, they're going to go 4-2. So for Utah, they come into this game extremely desperate. So I expect to see some things that we haven't seen. They're going to need some help in the defensive backfield. A starter named Nate Ritchie got really messed up in the West Virginia game. And Kyle's talking about he doesn't want to do this injury report. He's older now, and he only has a year or 2 to go. So he's playing games with the injury report. He won't release a depth chart. He's like, okay, I'll show you. Just a bunch of nonsense. But it didn't look good. Nate Ritchie, who's a big time defensive, playing safety, he replaced Cole Bishop, who now starts for the Buffalo Bills, right? And if you are a 2 or a 3 year starter on Utah's defense, historically, that means you too are an NFL player. And that's what Ritchie is this year. But I don't think that he's going to play. And they've got a freshman there. So maybe the Devils can disguise some stuff there to be able to get those kids out of position a little bit on the back end of the defense.
So we're not going to ask you for a scoreboard prediction or even to pick a winner in this game, but knowing what you know about both these programs, what will ASU have to do to walk out of Rice Eccles, a venue that has not been kind to the Sun Devils for about the past decade? What do they need to do to walk out with a win?
Well, I don't think that they can continue to fall behind, and that has been amazing. If you're a Sun Devil fan, this is like going to the dentist and getting teeth pulled with no Novocaine watching these first halves of these games, right? How many times can two things? How many times can they keep coming back from 14 and 17? And how many times can they keep winning close games? We used to talk here, and I've been around here long enough, that Urban Meyer made a deal with the devil because it seemed like everything he chose to do in his 2 years at Utah worked. I don't know if Kenny Dillingham is the latter day version of Urban Meyer because he finds a way, the team does, to win all these close games. It's amazing, right? We've seen it all last year and then 2 conference games this year. I realize they lost one, but you'd rather lose the non-conference than the conference. So I think they have to move the ball consistently right from the start. Obviously, turnovers. Kyle, and he's not unlike any major college coach that I've been around for years. They say the most important statistic is the score, the final score. The second one is the turnover battle. And what is Kenny Dillingham? He's like 13-0 when they win the turnover battle, right? So they got to make sure that at least it's even. Both teams have to make sure, because I think whoever loses that is going to be at a significant disadvantage. And so find a way. And ASU's been great with these turnovers, man. These interceptions that they've been coming up with, and what's his face, Prince, with that play the other night. I mean, you had that reminded me of a hockey goalie. What did I just see? Why are they celebrating? Because you had to watch the replay to make sure you saw what you thought you saw. And that was an incredible play. They've found a way to make huge turnovers when they've needed them. Continue that. Maybe that's who they are. Maybe Ward has got them being this ball hawking defense. Continue that. Whoever wins the turnover battle, I think, is going to go a long way towards winning the ball game. And then if you do get stuffed a little bit, make sure you don't miss your field goals. You got to get points, right? That's how you win the game. That's what they give you credit for, is getting points. You get to inside the 5-yard line and turn the ball over on downs. Well, you may have field position, but it's a huge letdown, particularly on the road where there'll be 52, 3,000, whatever the stadium holds. It's going to be sold out. There's no doubt about it. Utah fans are very passionate about their football, and they understand this is a big game. So make sure you do not lose the turnover battle or even win it, and don't get off to these horrendous slow starts. And for defense, try to control Dampier. Don't let him get out on you. Get him bottled up. the way Texas Tech did, I don't think that Dampier had a run longer than 7 yards. And if they can do that, that's 3 things. And if they come out on the plus side of those 3 things, I think they got a chance to win the game.
Well, Patrick, as always, we appreciate you, my friend. I'm sure that all listeners and viewers would agree that this is our favorite opposing interview to do every single year when we match up with the Utes. We encourage
I saw some list that I was on the bottom of it in most appearances.
Brad runs the all-time appearance list.
I think this is number 10. So I think this is only second to our U of A guy. I think is number. Yeah, you're up there.
Well, people ask me when I'm going to retire. Guys, I have a killer job. I don't work. I have a job, but what I do is not work. So I have no intentions. So I look for what I guess they got to play each other again. I don't know. Obviously, right. BYU and ASU are not playing this year, but if the Utes are playing in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm your guy.
Appreciate it as always. We encourage everybody to check you out on Twitter, PK Kinahan. My friend, here's to a great one this weekend and all the best for both teams moving forward.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Before we go behind enemy lines and tell you all about the Utah Utes, well, this one right here is for the homies. If you want a restaurant as passionate about Sun Devil athletics as you are, you got to make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. And oh, by the way, I believe that there's an engagement to celebrate. If I saw our good buddy Angel getting engaged and posting that on the Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Breaking news
from what I saw. I believe it was just yesterday or over the weekend. If I'm correct with that, all the congrats in the world there. Burrito Express, however, began with a vision, a family-run Mexican restaurant serving authentic food and with fast, friendly service and deep community roots. That makes Burrito Express a true multi-generational family-led legacy. From the beginning, it's always been about flavor, family, and the people that they serve at Burrito Express. Burrito Express is more than just a place to eat. They're part of the neighborhood. And as you know by now, a strong figure in the Sun Devil community. From day one, they focused on bold flavors, fast service, and real connections with the communities that they served. It's that mix of quality, culture, and care that makes Burrito Express different. Burrito Express delivers bold flavor, fast service, and hometown pride in every bite. Order online or pick up for delivery and fuel up with real deal burritos made fresh daily across the valley. You can visit any one of their 9 locations, 2 of which are fast and fresh restaurants located in Circle K stores. You can find Burrito Express in Tempe, Scottsdale, Chandler, Gilbert, and Queen Creek. Most locations are open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday and 8 to 3 on Saturday and Sundays, while some locations are open 6 to 3 during the week and 7 to 3 on weekends. Check them out online at theburritoexpress.com and follow them on social media at BurritoEXP on Twitter and Instagram, Burrito Express AZ on TikTok, and on Facebook at facebook.com/yourlocalburritojoint. All right, Brett. So do we still consider it a potential rivalry? I don't know if we've gotten the Big 12 update on the viewpoint of this matchup.
I think that the vitriol we saw from the BYU game has me thinking that we might see a flip-flop in the order.
I tend to agree, and I think that there's a lot between those, but no matter what, there's some heat. There's definite heat between these programs, whether you label it a rival, whether you do, whether you don't, that's undeniable. There is some heat between Arizona State and Utah. So let's dive in. Of course, a huge matchup between the Devils and the Utes coming up this Saturday night in Salt Lake City. So ASU holds a 23-12 all-time edge in the series. A little under half those games were played in the 1960s and 70s when they were both in the WAC. A few matchups sprinkled across the 80s and 90s. There was nearly a 20-year gap between the matchups from 1993 until Utah's first season in the Pac-12 in 2011. Now, since 2011, since they've been conference mates, they've met 13 times. ASU holds a narrow edge, 7-6. However, ASU has lost 4 in a row and 6 of 8 before winning in Tempe last year. In Salt Lake City, ASU has lost 3 straight and 4 of 5, with the most recent victory at Utah coming on October 21st, 2017. In Todd Graham's final season. I think J.J. Wilson had
J.J. Wilson pick 6.
There you go. Exactly. I think Christian Sam had a big game. Yeah, those were good but different times. That is for sure. So with at head coach, very known name there, with Mike Gundy having been fired a few weeks ago from Oklahoma State, Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham now stands alone as the second longest tenured active FBS head coach. He's been in charge of the Utah program since 2005, replacing Urban Meyer that year. Only Iowa's Kirk Ferentz who's been the Hawkeyes head coach since 1999. He's the only FBS coach longer tenured than Whittingham, again, with Gundy being outed a couple weeks ago. I presumably he's a shoo-in for, a college football Hall of Fame spot in the future. He's got a 171-87 all-time record at Utah, 9 end-of-season AP top 25 rankings. That said, last few years have been a bit of a skid for Whittingham and the Utah program. The Utes won 10 games with a Rose Bowl appearance in 2022, fell to 8-5 in 2023, and then a 5-7 finish last year. That's the first time since 2013 that Utah has had a losing record. This year, however, the Utes certainly look improved in what they've done. They're 4-1. They're a few spots outside the top 25 in the AP poll, essentially being ranked 29th, entering this week's game. So though the last couple seasons have, again, been a skid from that really strong standing that they had with like back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances, they're off to a very good start.
Yeah, and Whittingham, of course, one of the best coaches in the country for a number of years. But I think he sees the end is near, that his coaching tenure is kind of in its last maybe year or a couple of years. I believe they had Morgan Scaley, the DC, has been their coach in waiting for a while now. And I think it was really interesting. Like it almost kind of felt like he acknowledged that for the first time this past offseason. They've never been like a heavily active portal team, but as we'll get into, they brought in a lot of new faces to really kind of put those, at least by their standards, their rough last couple of years behind them, and really kind of, maybe end his tenure with a bang. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this, this new look Ute team performs down the stretch. But being in the Rice Eccles Stadium at night, no less, that's a heck of a boost.
Yeah, this offseason, it seems like Utah did some, atypical things for their program. It seemed like they had such continuity in their coaching staff, forever. And made some changes there. As you talked about the portal, they'd gotten guys before, but it didn't seem like they were going, really deep into it for the really key positions. And they did that. And it's, so far created some results for them. So to take you through what they've done so far, Utah swept through its non-conference slate with ease, beating UCLA, Cal Poly, and Wyoming by a combined score of 137-25. The Utes were then brought back down to earth. That 34-10 loss at home to Texas Tech. They bounced back with a 48-14 road win against West Virginia. And like ASU, this past weekend, Utah had a bye. Now, as we get into the player personnel here, for the first time in what feels like a decade, but honestly, decade is a pretty accurate way to describe the amount of time that Cam Rising spent at the University of Utah. There's a different quarterback, and it's kind of odd that it seems like I don't know if was his last game that he played in college against ASU. I mean, that was,
I don't know if he came.
Yeah, because we heard Patrick Kinahan in our Know Your Enemy segment, our great friend, talk about that 2023 game where, Utah coaches and others felt some pity for ASU, which was valid at the time. That was kind of how I felt watching Cam Rising play. As much as he wanted ASU to win, I mean, that was just the injury that he had. Like he couldn't barely throw the ball. He was toughing it out. But I mean, that was just I don't mean this disrespectfully to say it's like a sad performance. It's just the guy shouldn't have been out there. It was tough to watch.
I think it's a big reason why ASU won. I think we talked about on the show that if they had gone to their backup or anybody who could perform at an adequate replacement level, it might have been a different outcome. I don't know, but yeah, it was like he was gutting it out. But he just last couple of years were kind of really unfortunate because he had been such a great player for them and representative of that program. But he just obviously was so banged up, just could not get around. And ASU, they took advantage.
It was the Caleb McCullough coming out party there with those 2 picks against Rising to seal the deal. So moving ahead, turning the page at quarterback for Utah, certainly a familiar name for those who follow high school football in the state of Arizona, Devin Dampier, a Scottsdale Saguaro graduate, also spent a few years at the University of New Mexico, lighting things up as a dual threat athlete. One of the most gifted athletes at quarterback that there is in college football. Bit of a risk reward element about his game. We kind of talked about it with Patrick Kinahan. He's someone that can turn the ball over a little bit, but he can light it up, especially on the ground. He can throw the ball as well. Statistically, in 2025, he averages about 205 passing yards, 52 rushing yards per game, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns. Completes about 73% of his passes. Now, then 2 of those 3 interceptions he's thrown so far occurred against Texas Tech, and that was a big deal in the loss that they had. So I'm not going to say he's like a risk reward or boomer bust guy, like on too much of a level, like the Jameis Winston kind of thing in the NFL, I guess you could say. but he is somebody that is very dynamic. But if you can get him into the right situations, can be a little turnover prone.
Yeah, I think, as Patrick Kinahan outlined, I think this is a guy that you want to keep in that pocket, make him throw the ball. ASU's faced some very talented gunslingers so far this season, and I thought it has done reasonably well, holding a couple of potent offenses in TCU and Baylor to 24 points each. But yeah, the Stephen Dampier, I think there's some questions making that jump from the Mountain West. Would he be able to hang at this level? I think you consider that question firmly answered in the affirmative. He's a darn good player, but I think this is a passing offense that really doesn't take a whole lot of chances. Likes to kind of methodically work its way down the field. Now, obviously, as we'll get to, one of the best offensive lines in the entire country, and so that helps pave the way for, again, the annual very good Utah ground attack. Doesn't take a whole lot of sacks as well. They're very good on third down, and he's just a smart player and a guy that ASU just can't afford to get out of that pocket.
So talking about that ground game leader there, Washington State transfer Wayshawn Parker, you heard about him from Kinahan about how he was expected to have really big numbers and has done well, but not necessarily taken a true grasp of the position. Doing very well so far, statistically at least, 280 yards with 3 touchdowns, runs for 6.7 yards per carry, 6 receptions for 91 yards with 2 touchdowns there. Behind him, you've got Naquari Rogers. He has 250 rushing yards with a team best 4 rushing scores, along with 3 catches for 43 yards. And he, like Dampier, came from New Mexico. We talked about in the previous segment, quite a few guys, especially on offense, that have followed the offensive coordinator from New Mexico to Utah. In the past game, there are 2 players that stand out, but that's kind of about it. Wide receiver Ryan Davis, a New Mexico transfer, tight end Dallin Bentley. Other than those 2, there's no other Ute pass catchers with even an average of 20 receiving yards per game. Davis leads the team with 36 catches for 348 yards with 2 touchdowns, while Bentley, he's a long tenured guy. He's been with the program since 2023. These days, if you're in your 3rd year in the same program, that you're an elder statesman there. He has a team best 3 touchdown catches as part of his 22 receptions for 246 yards. But again, beyond those 2, pretty big dip in the productivity among all the pass catchers.
Yeah, kind of not a whole lot of secret there, because those 2 guys account for 48% of the team's receptions. But yeah, that 3-headed ground game to me is going to be really interesting to see what ASU kind of draws up. Their strength so far has really kind of been in limiting opponents' ground attacks. ASU had a really good run defense last year, continuing that into this year. Now they're going to be, of course, without Zach Swanson, but still a pretty formidable group up front. I think some of the best linebackers in the entire conference. But that's going to be a good battle in the trenches. That offensive line's very good. They're top 20 rushing attack in terms of the yards per carry. As a team, and having 3 different guys, and especially that guy that you have to account for, that 11th man in Dampier, being such an elusive threat with the legs, that's going to be crucial. Also, kind of on the back end, that's going to be interesting, because like when Patrick brought it up, is something I also noticed in watching some of the Utah games, just in terms of how teams maybe don't have to really respect the downfield passing game and maybe keeping everything up front. How Brian Ward and kind of that chess match there. Hopefully, it doesn't take falling into a 17-0 hole before those mid-game adjustments that have been such a crucial part of ASU success kind of kick in. So I think the early part of this game is going to be really interesting to see exactly how the Devils kind of defend and that passing game, and kind of maybe try to put things on Dampier's right arm.
Maybe if they ask the scoreboard operators at Rice Cycle Stadium real nice, they'll put 17-0 on the scoreboard at the opening kickoff. That might help activate the team. You talked about the strength of this offensive line. They've got some big-time guys there. Spencer Fano, one of the absolute best in the nation. He's going to be a high-level first-round pick. Caleb Lamu, he is a Gilbert Highland High product. Both of them were preseason all Big 12 picks for 2025. Flipping over the defense, it's just always a strong unit, and you look at it year after year, and even though the names change, a lot of the potency remains on the Utah defense. Talked about John Henry Daly, defensive end. He's got the most eye-catching statistics, 25 tackles, including 8.5 for loss with 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He ranks 3rd nationally and leads the Big 12 in sacks, and tied for 2nd nationally and tied for 1st in the conference in tackles for loss. So he's someone that's getting behind the line of scrimmage, unlike many players across the country right now. Lander Barton is also a known name. He's been around for a while, 23 tackles on the year. Safety Jackson Benny, 3 interceptions, 20 tackles as well. Only 3 players in the country have more interceptions than his 3. Linebacker Jonathan Hall leads the team with 26 tackles. Nate Ritchie, who we heard may or may not be in action this week, he's not far behind, 2nd on the team with 25 tackles, including 3.5 for loss.
My favorite stat heading into this week is And I think, if ASU's offense has really struggled in the red zone. So I look, and Utah is allowing opponents to score 100% of the time they get in the red zone. Problem is, Joe, they've only allowed 6 red zone trips all season. The second few, Indiana's allowed 3, Utah number 2 with 6. I mean, granted, it's 4 touchdowns out of the 6. That's not bad, but this is a pretty good defense. The years change, the names change, but Utah's brand is going to be strong on the defensive side of the ball. Really good. Of course, they're really good on third down. Opponents only converting about a 34% clip there. You mentioned the picks, 6 picks overall. They have the 25th lowest opponent passer rating in the country. They're really good. Of course, they got a terror in John Henry Daly coming off the edge there. It is interesting though. They're kind of mid, 74th in the country in yards per carry. Still not great. Opponents are averaging just a tick over 4 yards. But I mean, that's kind of just like the one little weak point here. Just this is a really good defense year in, year out, and they got some dudes, and they're going to be playing with a loud, raucous home crowd behind them. So we've had some questions about ASU's offense, and this is going to be their biggest test yet.
Now, before we jump into our keys for this ball game and predict how this one will shake out, if you're not subscribed to devilsdigest.com, well, then, folks, what are you waiting for? Do it right now. I'm going to give you 1 second. Dial it up. devilsdigest.com on your cell phone, on your computer. Get there. Find the spot where it says log in or subscribe. Get there. You're going to get a great amount of content about Sun Devil athletics. Of course, just a lot of depth of football coverage. And then as the year progresses, as the school year progresses, you're going to get coverage in men's basketball, baseball. You're going to get some hockey, a little bit of everything. Going to be there. Everybody's fired up to be a member of devilsdigest.com. Of course, that also gets you premium content across the On3 and Rivals network. As you know, this offseason, there was that big merger just giving you're the one who wins when you get a merger like that. So become a subscriber to devilsdigest.com. Get the best Sun Devil content that you can consume in addition to what you got from Brad and me. Make yourself a true Sun Devil fan. Be a part of devilsdigest.com. So for me, it's going to be a lot of similar things because I think it's just ASU's at a point where there are just a few categories that are like every game concerns or, things that can go one way or another. And so it's really kind of whittled down to a few important things. One of which for me is you have to have a strong start. You cannot go into Rice-Eccles Stadium and get down 2 to 3 scores in the early standing of the game in the first half. I know that you can come back from that at Mountain America Stadium and maybe other venues, but I know there are a lot of folks out there that have mixed feelings about the Utah program, maybe their fan base, that sort of thing, especially, some experiences folks have had online. I know that it sounds like everybody's had a great time in person, so it's kind of a weird dichotomy with the online versus the in-person type of thing, but kind of so is life, right? But yeah, that environment, if Utah's up 17-0 in the second quarter, it's going to be out of control, and that's going to be very difficult to come back from. And you just want to see that whole thing end. You want to see them go out on the road and start a game strong and be as competitive as humanly possible. I just feel like this is one that the luck will run out if they get down 2 to 3 scores in the first half. I don't know that you're going to see a repeat of what happened against TCU.
Yeah, Utah's just simply too good to have to ramp up that degree of difficulty there. And kind of on a similar note, for me, ASU cannot continue to shoot themselves in the foot in the red zone. You need 7 points on these drives. ASU's putting up a lot of yards. They had 498 yards the last game. It's not a whole lot of points that you should be scoring. This is like by a lot of metrics. This should be an offense that should be in the mid 30s in terms of points per game, and it quite simply is not. This is an offense that has a really good quarterback, the Big 12's leading rusher, the best probably receiver in the conference, if not the country, and you're still struggling to find pay dirt. And when you're having a stretch like this where you're playing Utah, you're going to host Texas Tech, a resurgent Houston team, then going on the road for a conference title game rematch, you simply can't afford it. And this is going to be one of those things, like Joe said, some of these things that after this 5 games into the season, trends are trends. And you don't want these to be exactly locked in as to who you are, but we're getting to that point in the year where who you are is really who you are. And you don't want to be a team like ASU that so far has been able to, or not being able to come away with, completing those drives, getting into the end zone, getting 7 points. Cause you might be able to make a nice rally here or there and come back. but it's not sustainable, and neither is foregoing those 4 points on those drives.
Yeah, and that's, you know what? That's my second one, and I'm not just making that up just to be, coincidental with it. You got to execute in the red zone, especially that deep red zone, that inside the 10. I mean, just to echo what Brad said, the incredible turnover advantage that ASU has had collectively had over the last 2 games, and the offensive outpour that they had, and the comparison of the disparity between the total yards between ASU and TCU. To have that go on the last 2 games, but only win both by 3 games, or by 3 points rather, and per kind of excruciating fashion. They should have been much larger margins of victory. Now, you're not going to turn away a win, but again, you look at some of these things and you look at the upcoming opponents and say, if you continue, no disrespect to Baylor and TCU, they're solid teams, but there are things that maybe you can get away with against them that you can't get away with against a Texas Tech or even a Utah. So when you get into the red zone, when you get inside the 10-yard line, they just have to, and I hope that they use the bye week just to come up with some creativity in that regard, and really just take that seriously and figure out that some things do need to change as far as what they do and how they operate, because we've seen some incredible plays. We talked about a couple of weeks ago about the plays that were run on that 2-point conversion to Jordan Tyson against Baylor, and the great touchdown was like an agonizing possession that ended up well on that 4th down touchdown against TCU. So you just got to see these red zone trips result in touchdowns. If you're settling for 3 or going, turnover on downs, that's just not going to be a winning proposition.
My second key of the game is to protect Sam any way that you can. That's a fearsome defensive front that likes to get in the backfield and wreak havoc. And one of the criticisms that I've had of this ASU team so far this year has been the pass protection. It has not been great, not been consistent. ASU has been, unfortunately has one of the higher sacks allowed totals in the conference. And now this is, thankfully they have Sam Levitt, who has a sixth sense about him and has spun his way out of a number of sacks. Otherwise, it could be a much bleaker picture. But this Utah team, this Utah defense is not one that you can necessarily count on that kind of magic on a consistent basis. So hopefully this bye week has allowed the Sun Devil offensive line to kind of refocus, re-energize, rest up, heal up a little bit, and get ready, because they need to keep Sam Levitt upright throughout the majority of this game, because I think they're going to need their leader to get all the points they can.
So your key being about how ASU protects the quarterback. My third key is going to be how ASU goes after the opposing quarterback. ASU has kind of out of nowhere become one of the best pass rushing teams in the country. Yeah. They listen to us on that one. Like, some things make their way, into orbit, and they land in the offices of Kenny Dillingham and company. I like to think that that's how that transpires. And obviously these last 2 games, ASU has just become a turnover generating machine, and like these turnovers at like the most incredible times. I mean, that play by Prince Dorba against TCU was one of the most like timely plays that we've seen in a long time. You need to keep that going with Devin Dampier, a guy who rushed for well over 1,000 yards last year at New Mexico. He is quite literally one of the most talented dual threat quarterbacks in college football. You just gotta lay some hat on him. You gotta make him pay for being a quarterback. You have to make him regret being a student athlete. You gotta hit him hard. You cannot allow opportunities for him to escape the pocket. So you gotta really have some forceful contact with Devin Dampier, and you got to keep those turnovers going. Like that element, I think, if you're going to like name one key to this game that is going to be the difference making factor. I mean, look at the box scores in Utah's wins. You look at the box score in their 1 loss. What stands out at you? Devin Dampier turning the ball over. If ASU, as we talked about again with Patrick Kinahan, need to win the turnover battle there, if you can force him into a couple turnovers, whether that's interceptions or fumbles or a collection of both, that would be great. If he's got a clean pocket to work with, if he's able to escape the pocket and safely make his way out of bounds and things like that, if he is having open windows to throw through and not really having much competition there, that's going to be a very long day for ASU. But if the Devils can consistently harass him in the backfield, not let him break big gains on the ground, and force him into turnovers, which can happen, then that is how ASU can make its way out of Rice-Eccles with a victory.
All right, this has worked the last couple of weeks, so might as well run it back again. B+2 in the turnovers. Everything Joe said, we'll co-sign there. But that obviously means forcing several turnovers, and of course, as to our earlier points, converting in the red zone. That also, on the flip side, means not committing any. And Rice Eccles, I don't know what it is about when the sun is down up there in Salt Lake, it becomes about 10 times more hostile atmosphere than when the sun is up. And it's going to be cold. The forecast calls for some chances for rain, thunderstorms. Even Kenny was talking today that there might be maybe some game delay issues, and maybe it could be, and it's already going to be a late kick, so it could get weird. And could be things that throw ASU off of the rhythm they've been in the last couple of weeks, and maybe they get sloppy, and maybe they lose focus and they turn the ball over. The margin of victory or the margin of error for trying to get these victories over this really tough upcoming stretch is razor thin. And you can't fall victim to some of the mistakes, whether they are slow starts or turning the ball over, that ASU has put on display. And they've been really good in terms of that being that +2, +3 in the turnover margin. I think they got to do it yet again.
So as we break things down and give you the way we see it shaking out in Salt Lake City, this is a really interesting matchup because, though ASU is a nationally ranked team and Utah is not terribly far out of that standing, I think both sides are really not sure what their teams are truly all about. Utah is a squad where they've won the games they've won, but against, as we talked about, some subpar competition. They got pretty well waxed by a team that is a top 10 team right now and looking every piece of what folks thought they might be in the preseason, that being Texas Tech. So, and on ASU side, they've gotten off to these 2 thrilling wins in conference play, but there are still some aspects, that kind of haunt you, and they still haven't played a complete game. There's a lot of points left out on the field. So this game, I think, will go a long ways to defining both of these teams, and they're 2 squads that have legitimate chances at being conference title game contenders. Now then, it's and I think that Utah is pretty well shaken off that pretty bad loss to Texas Tech. They got a large margin conference win against a roughed up West Virginia program. They got a bye week, so I think that Texas Tech game is pretty far in the rear view mirror. I think Utah is just looking full steam ahead week by week. It's a tough atmosphere to play in. I mean, this stadium has been very unkind to Arizona State for over a decade now. It's just one of those games where it's almost kind of like that, like not similar to Oregon State. Oregon State, you looked at like when they'd be, if you're playing on the road in Corvallis, like, is it going to be in October, November? Like, you never felt good about that. Now, that was kind of from the underdog perspective. Utah's a different program, but the reason I give that comparison is you just kind of look at that when you play them on the road and see, like, what's the kickoff time going to be? What time of year? You just never feel too great about it because ASU's not had that much luck. And for this one, I just feel like there might be, until we see some of those aspects like the slow starts or just lulls in the game. They've had fast starts, but then like a game against Baylor where they started well, but then you let them back in the game in the second half. And we saw that last year. It was either like slow starts or slow finishes that led to all these close games. I just feel like there are some downsides of this ASU program that are gonna bite them in the rear end this weekend, quite frankly. Now then, to win this game, they're going to have to overcome those. So if they do that, then that's going to be an incredible sign of progress. But for me, I see the crowd getting into it. I see Dampier making more plays than anything negative. I think he probably will have a turnover, maybe more, but I think he just compensates, for that with some athletic plays. Their defense can make plays as well. I think that they're going to get to the quarterback, and that's going to, cause ASU to have some offensive struggles. I see this being a very competitive game. But like many of them have gone between ASU and Utah when they're played in Salt Lake, I see this one going toward the home team with a 28-24 Utah victory.
Well, I hear a lot of what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that this is a game that's very crucial for both teams that view themselves as Big 12 title contenders. I think this is a game where both teams are pretty evenly matched. I think both have the ability to, have a very sound running game that can help win that time and possession battle. That's certainly been a central component of ASU's success in recent weeks. Utah, of course, is that their brand identity is solid. They're going to run the ball. Now they have a quarterback who can add that 11th man threat and get out there and make some plays with his feet. That definitely adds to it. I think that this is going to be a stern test for ASU's remaining questions through these first 5 games. We're almost halfway through the year, and a couple of those big things that are just continuing to be hammered on, and rightfully so. Red zone, pass protection, the slow starts. Those are all going to be put to the test. And ultimately, I think that this is a game that just until ASU is able to kind of conquer those demons, I think you got to go with a team that's playing in front of one of the best home field advantages in the country. So we did not plan this, but very close. I had 28-26 Utah in the win. Now, I think we've also had a couple times where we've picked ASU to lose the season and challenged them on some things, and they've risen and answered the bell. So maybe this is the reverse jinx.
There you go. We have successfully reverse jinxed. we both went Baylor or TC. We've reverse jinxed, and it's happened many times. So it's a no lose situation. Either you're right or you get the reverse jinx. Either way, you're there. But yeah, it's going to be a real tough ball game. But if ASU is able to get out with the win, then I think that really sends things in an exciting direction. But one game at a time, like the great Bruce Snyder told us. Then as we kind of wrap things up here with today's episode. Now then, while many ASU stores have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. Found and owned and operated by ASU alumni since 1992, every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Many of their competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, alumni, students, and fans who help give input for some of the products Cactus Sports buys. When you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality, officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that you truly helped support a local small business that is Sun Devil owned and operated. Cactus Sports is located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe, open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays from 10 to 6. You can also view their full inventory and shop online at cactussports.com with free domestic ground shipping for orders of $75 or more. Be sure to follow Cactus Sports on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Cactus Sports AZ, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cactus Sports AZ. Locally owned and ASU alumni operated since 1992. Shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local.
All right, we're going to switch gears now from the football field to the hockey rink as ASU season is now underway. And so no better time to bring in hockey insider Tom Hardon coming from Hawaii. So really appreciate making the time to take some time away from the island adventures to talk some hockey with us.
Thanks, Brad. Glad to be on the show.
All right, so let's talk about the series that was ASU got tipped off their season against number 5 Penn State. Couple of nice matches or games there. ASU had some leads late in those games, unfortunately unable to hold on. So when you take the totality of those two games to open the year, what are some of your major takeaways?
It was a great opportunity to go up against very high caliber competition. Penn State was coming in with an incredible amount of hype with Gavin McKenna coming in. Plus, they have a very strong returning core of offense. Aiden Fink, Charlie Serrato, everything was on display for Penn State. And at the end of it, they were just too much for ASU to overcome, unfortunately. But I think this gave a really good barometer of where the team stands and where opportunities for improvement can be made.
All right. So as a goalie myself, I always got to start off in the crease a little bit. So, of course, that's just 2 games, almost the full season ahead. So let's talk about the Sun Devil goalies. Of course, newcomer Connor Hasley got the starts between the pipes. How'd you kind of evaluate his performance against Penn State and just overall heading into, the larger part of the season? How do you evaluate the overall ASU netminder group?
Hasley was great. I was very impressed with his performance. I had seen little snippets of him with Bentley last year, and he really impressed me in the tournament game against Boston College, nearly upsetting the number 1 overall Eagles until BC just poured it on at the end. But he finished the season with a nationally leading 11 shutouts. And anytime you see a goaltender with double-digit shutouts in college, they're doing something right. And as a senior, unfortunately, we're only going to get him for 1 year, but we have a great incoming freshman in Samuel Urban coming in right behind him. And I actually got a chance to ask Coach Powers about Urban's development throughout the season and what that might look like. we are going to get to see some serious minutes out of Rauban. He's not going to be your typical freshman that comes in mop-up duty or very, very limited spot starts against lower opponents. He's going to get some serious playing time, and Powers has recognized that Rauban is going to be the goaltender of the future for the Sun Devils. So I'm excited to see how he really progresses this season. I would hope that we're going to see him maybe one of the 2 games this coming weekend. If not, certainly we should see him on the road next weekend at Augustana.
So the skaters are a nice mix of returning players as well as some newcomers. Let's talk about the defensemen on there, those guys on the blue line. What's your evaluation of that group of defensemen and your expectations for them this year?
We've got some good size coming in on the blue line. Justin Kipke is a big physical presence that we've needed for quite a while, and he is a very Noah Beck style defenseman. If you remember from last year, Noah was very good at getting assists off the point and really driving the play. I would expect to see Kipke start to man the point on the power play, really help get into the offensive flow. And then you've got the returners in Sam Court and Joel Shelberg. Those guys, as freshmen last year, got a lot of time on the ice, and that only prepared them more for developing as sophomores, into this season and beyond.
There's also some big names among the forwards. Perhaps Colin Potter, perhaps chief among them, amongst the returners. Overall, how do you feel this group of forwards is setting up for the Sun Devils this year?
Our forward group on paper, we are excellent at forward. It's this team this weekend. It was a little bit of a rough adjustment going up against a great team in Penn State. I think given a little bit more time playing together, getting more into the game flow, because these guys really only had about a week to practice full time together before hitting the ice. I think that first weekend jitters out of the way, now can really start to formulate the correct game plan and get everybody on the same page, get that offense flowing like a well-oiled machine.
And when you look at the totality of this Sun Devil team heading into this 25-20 through 26 season, what do you feel are kind of the strengths of this unit heading in?
We've got a very, very strong top 6, and it's only going to get stronger when we get the return of Noah Beck's younger brother, Jack Beck. He transferred in. He had actually played a few games at the ECHL level. They're calling it a suspension, but it's not really a suspension. He played several games after his 22nd birthday and therefore is ineligible to play for the first 6 games, but we will see him for the start of conference play at Miami, Ohio at the end of October.
Kind of on the flip side there, what are some areas of this team that perhaps you have question marks? Are still kind of in a wait and see mode heading into the year?
The power play is the biggest opportunity for me. We were 1 for 12 on the power play against Penn State and had a golden 5-on-3 opportunity for over a minute on Saturday night after Penn State had tied the game, had the chance to take the lead back and really assert our control. Unfortunately, we're not able to capitalize on any of that opportunity and allowed Penn State to stay in it. The other big opportunity for me is just cleaning up the play on the back end and not taking sloppy penalties. An ill-timed penalty by Anthony Dowd led to Gavin McKenna's power play game winner on Saturday, and I think just cleaning up the play and just keeping the sticks tight, keeping everything above the board, clean up those penalties, that will really get us onto more even footing.
Who's a player or two that you think has an opportunity to have a breakout year and become a star?
Sam Alfano is the first one that comes to mind for me. He's a fantastic transfer in. He was with Erie of the Ontario Hockey League last year. Amazing score, and that was on display on Friday. He got the first goal of the season. Great going up and down the ice. He's currently on the 4th line, but the way that Coach Powers has talked about this team and how deep we are is, compared to seasons past, our 4th line could easily be previous teams' 3rd lines or even 2nd lines. So we have a lot of offense up and down the lineup. Staying on the 4th line, Johnny Waldron, transferring from Miami, Ohio, another big body. He had a great jump screen on Alfano's first goal, and I think that 4th line in total is really the driving point of our offense so far. the top 6 will get going. It's just a matter of time.
Of course, ASU had an exciting run in the conference tournament a season ago, just unfortunately missing out on the NCAA tournament. So when you look at all the additions, the moves over the course of this offseason, what do you think would be considered a successful season for this group of Sun Devils?
A successful season is at least getting back to the Final Four in the NCHC tournament. I think that this team has the chance to go all the way to the championship game. Likely we would be up against either Western Michigan or Denver in that championship game if we get that far. But I think getting to the championship game also gets us an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament and would be the second tournament appearance in program history.
So when we kind of take a macro view of this program, obviously I believe it's now year 11 here at the NCAA level. Where do you think ASU has to kind of establish itself in the hierarchy of the sport at this juncture?
We're beyond the up and coming stage. We are starting to establish ourselves as, we're not at the level of the Blue Bloods of North Dakota, Boston College, etc., but we are getting ourselves to the level that this team is not to be taken lightly. We are not flying under the radar anymore. We are a known quantity at the NCAA level. And week in and week out, teams see us on the schedule. They're not going to be overlooking us.
All right. So obviously you have been dialed into this program for many, many years now. Where can fans keep up with all your great coverage?
Keep up with all the coverage on Devils in Detail. I will be posting several articles every week leading into every series, game recaps on Fridays and Saturdays, and I'll start doing an NCHC snapshot at a glance. Also on Monday nights, college hockey coast to coast, we will talk ASU hockey and across the country, giving a broader scope of where ASU fits in the national landscape. And we will be covering on Echo from the Buttes, the weekly podcast with Devils in Detail. I'll be giving some insights leading in and out of every series, in addition to all other ASU athletics.
Well, awesome stuff, Tom. Thank you so much for taking some time. Oh, let's get back to your tropical adventures, but we'll definitely be having you back on the show a little bit later on as the season, as the Devils make a drive for the tournament.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brad.
Now, as we close things out, we just want to give a big thank you and shout out to our wonderful friends at Sun Devil Family Charities, which is, of course, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are then evaluated by their patient services committee. So basically, to put this all in plain English, if you or someone you love has a connection to Arizona State University, and if you're listening to this, chances are that you do, and if you or someone that you love happens to be suffering some financial hardship due to medical issues that you have experienced, that's what Sun Devil Family Charities exists to do, to help folks in those circumstances. So we strongly encourage that you check them out, contact them if you or someone in your life has that sort of need. They also greatly appreciate monetary donations. Of course, that's how they exist. And volunteer and sponsorship opportunities also are available. You can learn all about everything that Sun Devil Family Charities offers and what sort of services they provide. And if that's something that you may need to benefit from, you can check all that out on their website, sundevilfamily.org.
And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank all of our great guests. This Saturday's game will kick off at 7:15 p.m. Arizona time. That's, I believe, 8:15 local if you're heading to the game. And Joe, I will not be, for the first time in 110 games since the Wazoo game in 2015, I will not be in attendance to cover an ASU game.
That was the infamous, fifth down game. Yeah. Wow. I actually missed watching that on television. Fun fact, because I was asked to judge a pageant, and it was actually a wonderful experience. Not that I thought it would be a bad thing, but it was a really cool experience. And so I watched that game at home, and you know what? I didn't miss too much by watching it. So hopefully there is some good vibrations in the air, just like I'm sure last week was a great show in my absence. ASU can put on a great performance in Brad's absence.
Yeah, I'll be in Albany, New York, for a family wedding. The game I missed in 2015 was also due to a wedding. So I don't want to say ban fall weddings, but maybe Fridays in the fall.
I went to one this weekend. My good brother Robbie Pinnell, shout out to him. He attended our live show at 100 Mile Brewing. He got married to his lovely wife this past weekend, but they did it right and they chose the bye week.
Yeah.
That is some like 4D chess. If you're a Sun Devil fan, you check out the schedule and you say, you know what, we can have a fall wedding because it's nice weather, better than the summer. But you know what, do it on the bye week.
Like seriously, because like my wife's sister who's getting married, like this was not only ASU's bye week, it was the Steelers bye week. Like,
oh my goodness, yeah.
Let's go. Anyway,
1 week ahead, they could have done one. Oh goodness.
So in any event, if you're heading up there, bring a jacket. It's probably going to be a rainy affair. Also, make sure you stay with us on the social media side. Follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast. Follow on Instagram at Speak of the Devil. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and give me a follow on all things social media at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42.
And make sure you give us a 5-star review on the podcast platforms of your choice. We would greatly appreciate it. So, Joe and I will be back next week as we recap what happened in Salt Lake and look ahead to a titanic battle in Tempe against Texas Tech.